Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and we continue to talk and evaluate the US Israeli war on Iran, which has expanded to become a regional war with global implications, its global impact, especially because of the manner in which Iran has frozen the Strait of Hormuz and has prevented about 20 to 25% of oil supplies from reaching the rest of the world. So even though the war is regional, it has clearly become one with global implications. And if it continues for a while, there is no doubt that you could see many countries, perhaps even the entire world and the global economy going into a recession. Today, I want to talk about a particular turn that the war is taking. There are two different trajectories that one can see. One is that there is now a diplomatic avenue available, and there is discussions going on. America has proposed a 15-point plan for ceasefire, which was rejected, both ceasefire and the plan by the Iranians, who then counter-proposed a 5-point plan of their own for ending this war. And clearly, both the positions were maximalist. And I'm sure that even as they were typing those demands, they knew that they would not get. In fact, one of the new things that has been added to the discussions, most of America's demands are well known. But Iran has now added a new demand, which is that it wants to exercise sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. And wants the United States to essentially acknowledge Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. And that will probably be it will then legitimize Iran charging a toll for ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. So, but the next step seems to be, besides the diplomatic one, also one where the United States, surprisingly, is considering using ground troops. Already we have seen that two battalions or two sets of marine excursions have already been sent to the region, and now 2,000 to 3,000 paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne have headed towards the region. The United States now has about 7,000 additional troops besides the 50,000 or so they have in all the bases in the region. And this forward deployment of these 7,000 troops suggests that the United States is planning to actually to invade and annex a very critical island called the Kharg Island in the Persian Gulf. And what they want to do is essentially do tit for tat. Since Iran controls a choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, the US is trying to see if it can control Iran's choke point, which would be the island of Kharg. Let's look at its geographical location, and then I'll continue to talk about what this would mean. So Kharg is a small island. It seems it's just about 8 square miles. It's a tiny island right here in the Persian Gulf. It's actually quite far from the Strait of Hormuz, but right here. And it is from here that 90% of Iran's oil is exported. I find that quite baffling and amazing that Iran would have placed all its eggs in this basket called the Kharg Island. But apparently, it is from here that 90% of our Iranian oils, and that's why the United States has already bombed it several times in order to eliminate all its military and defense installations. They have not damaged its capacity to basically load up and send oil away. But they have essentially tried to degrade its defensive capabilities. At least that is what Donald Trump has claimed. And if they were to destroy that island, then of course it would become probably very difficult for Iran to export oil to the rest of the world. And that is its principal source of income, about $40 to $50 billion a year. So this is that Donald Trump's plan, I guess, to either put pressure by taking that island and compelling Iran to either open the Strait of Hormuz or essentially surrender and end the war. So in principle, it sounds like a great idea. The question really is, can the United States successfully execute an invasion of the Kharg Island? And clearly the Iranians probably are familiar. I will talk about some of the difficulties of that possibility And even the question whether 7,000 troops, I was reading some military experts, they feel that the United States will at least need 10,000 or more troops to be able to take that island. And let's look at the map of the island and see what is on the island. I have borrowed this map from the London Times. So if you look at this, it has an airport, and this is the runway. So you can see how tiny the island is. It's just 8 square miles if this is the length of the airport. So it has a radar site here. It has air defense complex here, which has been attacked. So they have attacked. The airport has also been attacked by the US. And then this is the tanker terminal. This is where all, I guess, the loading takes place. And the United States has not harmed it at the moment. So the plan, apparently, the strategic plan is for the paratroopers to drop onto the island, and they will rush and take the airport. That is probably their first mission, is to take the airport. And once they take the airports, then C-130s will land on this airport, bringing in more troops, more supplies, more weapons, etc. And so I guess the first US base will be right here near the airport, and then they will plan to take the island. If the US takes the island, it'll be. Now, what is also interesting is that on this tiny place, the US would have some 7 to 10,000 troops without any air defense. So air defense, whatever, will have to come from ships which are far away. I think USS Tripoli is going to be the main warship which will be serving as a defense and, I guess, providing care for this invasion. But the fear is that the Iranians have already mined the whole thing. There will be landmines. They are waiting for them. Now is the chance. This will be a chance for Iranians to increase the number of US fatalities. So far, the casualties are just 13 in a war that has lasted nearly a month. So in terms of protecting US forces, the US has done a tremendous job. But here it will be very difficult. It will be a sitting duck. Iran still has 1,000 missiles, ballistic missiles, according to some estimates. And so this will become a magnet. This is where Iran will focus all its drones, its missiles, its rockets, whatever it has, seaborne, airborne, whatever. So this is going to become a very difficult thing if the United States is unable to defend its troops here. It's like placing thousands of American lives in harm's way. I mean, there's no other way to describe this. This will be a very dangerous escalation. So I suspect that what Donald Trump is doing is that rather than take the island itself as a major negotiation point, if they take Kharg, then I think that Iran will be more conciliatory in its negotiations, while also there will be a very brutal fight and there will be tremendous, there are lots of people dying on the Iranian side. That will continue to happen, but there will be more fatalities here. It's not very clear whether the Israelis are going to risk any Israeli lives at all. I mean, why risk Israeli lives when you can risk American lives in your own national interest? And I think that is probably what the Israelis are thinking. Oh, we'll provide you with air cover from thousands of miles away, but you can send young boys from Ohio and the Midwest to go and fight and die there. This is going to be very dangerous for Donald Trump, who promised no more wars, no more regime change wars, no more never-ending wars. And even if the United States does take Kharg, I'm not very sure that the current regime is going to surrender immediately. This magic bullet that Donald Trump is searching for, I don't think exists. His assumption that, oh, if we bomb the hell out of it, kill the leadership, Iran will surrender, and then we will install a king in Tehran who will basically bow to Israel and every demand from Israel. That didn't happen. We are now nearly a month into this war. And then now this assumption that, oh, if we take the Kharg island, then Iran will surrender, then we will install a king in Tehran whose only purpose in life will be to advance Israeli interests. That's not going to happen. It is very clear that that's really not going to happen in this case. It's going to be a brutal war. It reminds me of Fallujah, as to what happened in Fallujah. It took the United States several months and thousands of lives to take that little town in Iraq, which was well, I don't want to go back and relive those days. I remember that it was a traumatic experience for the US. Many American soldiers died, many civilians died on the Iraqi side, etc. It was a brutal urban door-to-door war. Uh, so, but that is where I think this thing is heading. I think Donald Trump is probably going to use the threat of invasion of the island of Kharg as a negotiating tool rather than the invasion itself. But let me tell you that this war is a stupid war. This is a war of choice. This is not smart at all. Donald Trump talks a lot about how he's very smart. This is not a war that America should have fought. This is not in America's interest. Anybody who is America first, this would be the last thing that they would want to do. And invasion of Kharg will send the oil prices soaring once again. As it is, there are lots of rumors going on in the United States that somebody has made a lot of money on oil futures as a result of Donald Trump's announcement that he is not going to attack Iranian oil and infrastructure for 5 more days. Already 2 days have passed. So we are 72 hours away from America resuming targeting Iran's oil and energy infrastructure. But nevertheless, I think this threat of invasion of Kharg itself, perhaps Donald Trump feels is. But I also suspect that for the Iranians, this could be a bait. This is like they have not been able to cause any major casualties on the American side, and so maybe they're dangling a bait, and Donald Trump is taking the bait and sends in troops there, and now there are lots of soldiers on the ground who are going to be a magnet for Iranian missiles, drones, suicide bombers, and that island is entirely controlled by IRGC. I was listening to some Iranian experts and actually reading an Israeli newspaper which was making the case that the assumption in the war was that if we hit Iran very hard, then the regime will fragment and the elite in Iran will fragment. And once there is fragmentation in the elite, then either you will see a civil war, or what you will see is an opportunity for protests to take place. And then there will be an internal revolution leading to regime change. That is one of the part of the main plan. And it appears, at least from the Israeli observers, that the regime of the Iranian regime has become much more stronger. The IRGC is much more stronger. The people, the leadership that has emerged, the new leadership after the killing of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, and some of the major generals, is that the new leadership is far more radical and far more, shall we say, they are younger, and they are far more hostile and ideological than the previous leadership. So what the US has done is just replaced an Iran they don't like with an Iran they will like lesser in terms of the leadership. So I don't think that the prospects of an early surrender are possible at all. Iran has shown tremendous resilience. I'm not very sure whether, look, all experts on Iran and the Middle East and the military have told repeatedly in the past several decades that this invasion, this attack on Iran is not going to be easy even for the United States. That's why I'm sure that many presidents, George W. Bush, who was talking about axis of evil, and he wanted to go after Iran's nuclear weapons. He went after Iraq and saw what happened. It was completely unexpected. They thought they would finish it off within a week or two, and then they would be welcomed as liberators. What happened was the emergence of ISIS. In fact, there was a caliphate established there for a few years across Syria and Iraq. That's not what the US was prepared for, spending trillions of dollars and thousands of lives to bring back Iraq to a situation where it's not a threat in the region. And the same comments have been made and that's why American presidents after President Bush, Biden, who's like the sole purpose of Biden's existence was Israel, ironclad support for Israel, ironclad support for whatever Israel does. Even he didn't attempt this because he realized that he was listening to the analysts, he was listening to the military planners, he was listening to his intelligence that this is what would happen. I don't know who Donald Trump was listening to. It's very clear that he did not listen to American intelligence agencies, which told him, number one, that there was no imminent threat from Iran to the US. Number two, that Iran was not pursuing nuclear weapons as they thought. That is what Tulsi Gabbard said repeatedly. And in fact, one very prominent director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Kent, resigned his job, saying this war is being fought under pressure from Israel and Israeli lobby. So this has nothing to do with the US interest. That's why presidents in the past, in fact, Antony Blinken, Biden's Secretary of State, said this on camera, that Netanyahu tried to play the same trick with Obama. And he was president by saying, I'm going in alone with Iran against Iran, and you'll have to follow me, otherwise the American public opinion will be against you, blah, blah, blah. But Obama successfully did not fall to that plan and successfully pushed back at Netanyahu's attempt to take the US into this war. So now Donald Trump, who said no new wars, said no wars of regime change, no unending wars, no ground troops, is now actually thinking of putting troops on the ground. I really, really think that something is wrong with Donald Trump's brain. And it is, and he's not being served well by his cabinet. I just saw a cabinet meeting in which every cabinet meeting seems to begin with sycophants, the way Rubio and J.D. Vance. I mean, why do you need to praise Donald Trump every day? It's like a bizarre thing. I mean, it also tells you how insecure his cabinet is. They need to suck up to him. They are sycophants. They're not independent leaders. It is very clear that J.D. Vance was against this war. He was against the attack on the Houthis, too. But the way he was talking was as if he has no independent opinion. The same with Rubio, the same with Pete Hegseth. Well, Pete Hegseth is essentially brain dead. So I don't really expect anything smart coming out of his mouth at all. But Rubio, he was a senator for such a long time. Both Vance and Rubio are going to be the main contenders from the Republican side in 2028 to be the next president of the United States. But these two people continuing to remain like sycophants, unable to speak up about the U.S. interests and the risks to U.S. lives on this. It's fair. So right now, to sum up, basically there are two pathways that we see. One, the United States pursuing the diplomatic path and maybe coming to some kind of an understanding. And the Iranians are not going to end this war unless they are completely assured that there will be no more wars happening frequently. And I don't know how the US can give a guarantee that we will not attack again, because America, in this case, has no strategic autonomy. Netanyahu could start another war whenever he pleases. So essentially, the US will have to guarantee to Iran that Israel will not attack Iran again. That's one question. And the second issue really is the demands that Iran is making are like maximalist. It wants reparations for this war. It wants sovereignty over Hormuz. And if the war doesn't end, let me tell you this much, that if the United States lands troops on the ground and the war becomes really intense for the island of Kharg, then the price of oil will then shoot through the roof, and there will be really massive chaos. And I just finished an interview that I have uploaded with a former Indian ambassador to Saudi Arabia, as well as United Arab Emirates, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, and he made some very telling points. And one of his points was that the United States is losing its credibility in the world, creating an opening for countries from Asia, such as China and India, and even Russia, to play a greater leadership role and become stabilizers, while the United States becomes a disruptor of the global order. So anyway, so this is what I wanted to talk to you all about. Thank you for watching Conversations. Like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this with your socio-political network. And until next time, I'm your host, Muqtada. So if there are some interesting questions or comments, I will probably take them for a couple of minutes. There are some members here. I have to say hello to them. Sunny Singh ji. USA lost 13 air bases reported by New York. Is it true that troops working remotely from Europe now? Well, some troops have been withdrawn. There is no doubt about it, especially from Iraq. I think they have been vacated. And then about 200 US soldiers have been injured, and some of them very seriously, and they have been evacuated. Uh, I remember once I was going to Germany to give a talk, and I had to switch flights in Munich, and I met a U.S. Marine there, and he was returning from Iraq, and so I invited him for lunch, and this was a young kid. It was I couldn't believe it at that time. He was less than half my age. He was probably 20, 21, and he was very badly injured, and he was going back to Iraq after coming and being treated in Germany. So I felt so sad for him, and during our discussion, I mean, he was saying the right things that he needed to say as an American soldier fighting for freedom, for democracy, etc. But I also could sense that he was quite puzzled about his mission. And the same thing is probably going to be happening here. US soldiers getting wounded, going back to Europe to be treated, and then uh, I don't know really what will happen once Donald Trump lands troops where Iranians can hit them. As it is, the humanitarian cost of Iran is rising. There are over 2,000 Iranians who are dead. More than 30,000 have been injured. Infrastructure has been devastated. This war is inhumane. There's another case. He's been coming back to court. There was a report that he's being presented into the court again. The question was, is there enough evidence against Maduro to say that he was basically a narco terrorist trying to undermine the US? I think this war of ideology, there is no other reason to fight, only you. Well, of course, I mean, this whole idea of defending Israel is not a economic issue. It is a religious issue. If you go and listen to Tucker Carlson's interview with the American ambassador, Mike Huckabee, to Israel, I mean, that guy sounds like a jihadi. Yeah, that is true. There's not much damage to the US. There will be tremendous damage from Iran. A lot of Iran supporters are very upset with me, but let me tell you that billions and billions of dollars worth of losses, and with the sanctions remaining in place, if the war doesn't end amicably, then Iran will have much more trouble. And Iranian people who have already suffered for decades will continue to suffer more as a result of this war. Can you imagine if Donald Trump bombs their power plants, etc., like Russia has done in Ukraine? Haha, this is funny. Mohit, I just did a whole show on BRICS, and the sad part is that BRIC is being led by Modi. Modi has lost his tongue. You know, he brags that I'm the voice of the global south, but Modi does not speak on any global south issues. He did not speak up for the genocide in Gaza. I mean, this is one of the biggest crimes of this century, and Modi didn't say a word. So I sort of believe when Modi said that he was non biological, I now understand what he means. He's inhuman. He's incapable of empathy for thousands of women and children who were killed by Israel in Gaza. He was quiet when Maduro was taken from Venezuela. He was quiet when Iran was attacked. He didn't say a word when Khamenei was assassinated. He never said a word when a school was bombed and 170 girls died. The United States has done a lot of things, destroying an unarmed ship in the Indian Ocean, which was a guest of India. So Modi is now the leader of BRICS, is the president of BRICS this year. So he's a total loser these days. He's completely undermining India, and he has a following who thinks everything that he does is something brilliant. You know, India has become irrelevant. You know, Pakistan has become more relevant in this whole crisis as it is playing the role of mediator, which India should have played. all this talk of we are multi-aligned, we are friends with everybody, what use is it? Thank you, Christopher Moses. Chris was a member of Conversations. I think he still is. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm a big fan of Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed Saab. He's brilliant. He's 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 more of a scholar, but he has tremendous diplomatic experience, especially on this issue. He was ambassador to Saudi Arabia. I think he was ambassador twice to the United Arab Emirates. He's also served in the United States, but not as an ambassador, but I think a consul general or something. So from that point of view, he has had extensive diplomatic. He served as secretary to the Minister of External Affairs. So tremendous experience, in-depth knowledge, and very articulate and very candid. So I will try to invite him as often as possible. Thank you very much for watching Conversations. Please subscribe to the channel, share this with your network, and thank you for supporting the channel. Bye.